Hello besties, I attempted to make a hyper realistic cake of a sliced tomatoes. Actually, one of my YouTube subscribers suggested I make a whole tomatoes, but I decided to make a sliced tomatoes as it was a little bit challenging. So first of all, I got my cake. I got a round cake and I began to shape it into the shape of a tomatoes. But as I was making the shape of these tomatoes, I just figured out that this will not really allow me to play with it the way I wanted, so I discarded it. Instead, I used cake pops. Now, how to make your cake pops is just a combination of butter and your cake crumbs, and this is my cake pops. It will allow me to work the way I wanted. It was kind of flexible and all that. So this is me now trying to shape these cake pops into the shape of a tomatoes. These cake pops feel like working with mud or with clay, like you can make it into the shape that you want. That is how this cake pops actually feels in my hand. And I'm using my modeling tools to make those deep parts, like those deep parts you see in the tomatoes, that the center of the tomatoes. Just use your modeling tools. You can also use your hand to create those spots inside the cake when you see it in your tomatoes. So that is what I am doing, and this was what I got at the end. And now it's time for me to cover my cake with fondant icing. Cover the back with fondant icing, cut out the excesses, and also turn it around. Cover the front with your fondant icing, and make sure you get, like, you press in your fondant icing so that you'll be able to get this shape that you have made inside your cake. Please besties, if you're still watching, like my video, share my video, subscribe, and also follow me for more of this kind of content. And I would love to know your thoughts on this particular attempt that I made. So that is it. So this is me covering the front of my cake pops with fondant icing and sealing the sides of the cake. So let's see what we have here, and before we continue, now it's time for us to paint. Looking at your tomatoes, you will notice that the tomatoes is not really pureed. The outer part is kind of pureed. The inner part is kind of orange red, light orange. It contains white based on the kind of species you have at hand. The picture I have at hand, it has some yellowish parts, some orangish parts, and so on and so forth. So I mixed my color to be able to get the color I wanted. After that, I also painted some parts, a little bit of green color, and my tomatoes, the coloring is okay and it's also ready. Now after coloring, the next thing I will do is making the leaf of the tomatoes. So I got my wafer paper. Sorry, before we get there, I also got light yellow fondant icing. I had to make little tiny seeds to represent the little tiny seeds, and I began to add it into my tomatoes. So that was what I did. So just make the seeds as little as possible. Remember, we are attempting to make a hyper realistic cake or a realistic cake of a tomatoes. Now this is actually my gelatin mixture, gelatin and water. I allowed it to bloom before adding it into my tomatoes, but before then I had to get my wafer paper ready. This wafer paper would represent the leaf of the tomatoes. So after cutting it into the shape of a leaf, I had to paint it green color. After painting it green color, I had to keep it aside for it to dry before placing it in my tomatoes. Please besties, support me by liking this video, share with your friends, and also subscribe. So I just added the gelatin mixture and then added that the yellow stuff inside your tomatoes. I added it and then added back the liquid gelatin mixture on top of this yellow thing. I don't know the name of this yellow thing, but I know you understand what I am actually saying. So I'm still adding the seeds of my tomatoes on top of the yellow thing I've added. I added some seeds, added water, so that it's not look as if it's just the seeds are just one side. It will look as if the seeds are floating. I know you've seen the picture on my Facebook page. You will know what I am saying. So this is me. So I added a little bit of water, then placed my colored wafer paper on top of the tomatoes, and here we have it, a hyper realistic cake of the tomatoes. Thank you.